When a 6-month-old gray kitten named Smokey vanished in a Vermont snowstorm, the Carter family feared the worst. For 3 long days, they searched through knee-deep drifts in skin-cutting cold as the temperature plunged to 15-degree Fahrenheit. Just as hope began to fade, a faint cry rose from the edge of the dark forest. It was Smokey, but he wasn't alone. Curled against his silvery gray fur was another creature. Tufted ears, a pale reddish coat flecked with spots, and paws far too large to belong to any house cat. A domestic kitten and a wild bobcat kit had survived together beneath a fallen tree, warming one another with shared breath and heartbeat. The Carter family took the young bobcat in, naming her Willow, for her strange wide eyes and the fragile gentleness in her spirit. From that moment on, Smokey and Willow became inseparable. This is the story of 2 souls who found each other at the very moment they needed saving most, and of a friendship that dared to defy the laws of nature itself. Before we begin, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you won't miss any of our unexpected stories. The first snowflakes began to fall just after 4 o'clock that November afternoon, in the biting chill of early winter. They swirled in the wind, drifting past the bare oak branches that lined the Carter family farm in the mountains of Vermont. From the kitchen window, Megan Carter quietly watched the flakes grow heavier as she stirred a steaming pot of beef stew. The rich aroma of thyme and rosemary filled the wooden farmhouse that had stood strong for over a century against the northeast storms. Out back, her husband Jack was splitting thick logs for the fireplace, the steady thunk of his axe echoing across the 20 acres of woodland that surrounded them. Inside the cozy kitchen, their 10-year-old daughter Emily bent over her math homework at the wooden table. Each time her pencil touched the page, their ash-gray kitten, Smokey, pounced playfully at it, making the girl giggle as she tried to keep writing her numbers. "Mom, Smokey's being naughty again," Emily giggled, hugging the 6-month-old kitten tight in her arms. His silvery gray fur was impossibly soft, shimmering like fine silk under the warm kitchen light, while a faint purr vibrated from his tiny chest like the hum of a little motor. "Let him out for a bit," Megan suggested, glancing toward the darkening sky. "But just for a few minutes, okay? This storm's only going to get worse." Emily carried Smokey to the back door, his little white-tipped paws dangling comically over her arm. The kitten had only been with their family for 2 months, rescued from an animal shelter in Burlington. From the very first day he stepped into the old farmhouse, he had shown an unusual streak of independence for one so young, always eager to explore, always testing boundaries. Yet somehow, every night, Smokey found his way back to Emily's bed. "Just a quick adventure, okay?" Emily whispered, setting him down on the porch. "Dinner's in an hour." Smokey stretched luxuriously, his fluffy tail curling into a question mark, then suddenly darted off the steps, vanishing into the swirling snow. Emily watched as he slipped past the woodpile where Jack was chopping logs, then bounded toward the bird feeder at the edge of the yard. His silvery gray coat shone brightly against the blanket of white. An hour later, when Megan called everyone in for dinner, Smokey still hadn't returned. "He's probably holed up under the porch," Jack said, brushing thick snow from his boots. "You know how much he loves that game of hide and seek." But when Emily shone her flashlight under the porch, all she found were a few rusty gardening tools and a family of field mice scattering frantically in the sudden light. They searched everywhere: the garage, the shed, even the chicken coop. Jack even climbed up into the crawl space above the garage, only to come back down with his hair tousled and covered in cobwebs, shaking his head in defeat. By 7 o'clock, the snow was falling in thick curtains, burying the yard in white. The weather report on the radio called for 8 to 10 inches overnight, the first snowstorm of the season, arriving weeks earlier than usual. Megan bundled Emily into her warmest coat and held her hand tightly as the two trudged around the property, calling Smokey's name into the howling wind and swirling snow. "Smokey, come home, Kitty. Kitty." Their calls were instantly swallowed by the storm. The forest surrounding the farm, a mix of white pine, oak, and birch, stretching endlessly, had become an impenetrable wall of darkness and snow, cold enough to steal the breath away. That first night, Emily barely slept. She sat silently by her bedroom window, watching the snow pile higher with each passing hour. Her small hand pressed against the freezing glass, as if sheer willpower alone might bring Smokey home. At dawn, Megan found her still there, wrapped tightly in her grandmother's old quilt, the tracks of dried tears visible on her cheeks. "We'll find him, sweetheart," Megan whispered, though her own heart was heavy with doubt. The night before, the temperature had dropped to just 15 degrees Fahrenheit. For a house cat, no matter how thick his fur, the chances of surviving that cold were slim. The next day, the whole family threw themselves into the search. Jack took time off from the lumber mill, and even the neighbors joined in the Harpers from the farm to the east, and old Mr. Donnelly from across the snow-covered road. They trudged through knee-deep snow, shaking bags of Smokey's favorite treats, leaving out cans of tuna and a few warm blankets in sheltered corners around the property. "Sometimes cats just hole up somewhere safe and wait out the storm," Mr. Donnelly said, his Irish accent still thick even after more than 40 years in Vermont. "My barn cat once disappeared for 5 days during a blizzard. I found her in the hollow of an old maple tree, mad as hell but perfectly fine." But Smokey wasn't a barn cat. He was a kitten raised in the warmth of a pampered home. He'd never spent a night outdoors, never hunted for his own food, never faced the harsh reality of a northeast winter. By the third night, even Jack had stopped saying, "When we find him," and started saying, "If we find him." Only Emily refused to give up. After a dinner she barely touched, she pulled on her snow boots and reached for the big flashlight from the mudroom by the front door. "I'm going to look one more time," Emily declared firmly. "Sweetheart, it's dark, and the snow is still heavy out there," Megan cautioned gently. "Just around the yard, Mom. Please, let me go." Jack stood up. "I'll go with her. Just a quick walk around the property line." Father and daughter stepped out into the night. The storm had passed, leaving the world silent, frigid, and utterly transformed. The beams of their flashlights carved through the darkness, revealing a landscape that no longer resembled their familiar backyard. Everything was now smooth, white, and eerily foreign, beautiful, yet unsettling. They were about to turn back when Emily suddenly clutched her father's arm. "Dad, listen." Jack froze, holding his breath. At first, all he could hear was the whisper of wind through the snow-laden pines. Then it came, faint and desperate, a sound that made his heart jolt. A small, weak meow, drifting from somewhere far away. "Smokey," Emily cried out and bolted toward the trees. "Emily, wait for me," Jack shouted in alarm, his long legs struggling to keep pace with the desperate energy driving his daughter forward. The fragile mewing grew louder, guiding them through the young pines weighed down with snow. The beam of Emily's flashlight swept frantically through the dark until it caught on a tangle of fallen branches, forming a natural shelter against the trunk of an old oak. The girl dropped to her knees, ignoring the freezing snow soaking through her clothes. "Smokey, is that you?" Her small hands trembled as she pushed the branches aside, and in the moment the flashlight pierced the darkness. Both father and daughter froze, their breath catching in their throats. There, in a shallow hollow lined with pine needles and dead leaves, was Smokey. His silvery gray fur was matted and dirty with earth and snow, but his golden eyes still shone with sharp alertness. He lay on his side, and curled tightly against his belly, almost hidden except for a pair of tufted black-tipped ears, was another tiny creature. But that wasn't an ordinary kitten. "Dad," Emily whispered, her eyes wide. "Look at its ears, and those spots on its coat." Jack knelt beside his daughter, struggling to process the image before him. The kitten pressed against Smokey was much smaller, no more than 4 weeks old. Its tawny coat was marked with distinct dark spots. Its ears bore the signature long black tufts, and even in the beam of the flashlight they could see its paws were unusually large, far bigger than any house cat's police lies from. "A bobcat?" Jack breathed. "That's a bobcat kitten." Smokey gave another faint mew, but didn't move. He remained curled protectively around the tiny creature, the bobcat kitten shivering as it sought warmth from his body. The gray cat looked up at them with eyes Emily would later describe as a silent plea, as if to say, "Please help us." Jack's mind raced. By protocol, they should call the Department of Fish and Wildlife and let conservation officers handle it. But when he saw the two tiny creatures, one a house cat, the other a wild bobcat kitten huddled tightly together for warmth, he knew he couldn't follow protocol. "We're taking them both," he said firmly. He shrugged off his coat and gently wrapped them inside. Smokey didn't resist, and the bobcat kitten was too weak to do more than let out a few raspy, pained cries. As Jack lifted them, he could feel the frightening thinness beneath the bobcat's fluffy coat, a body so frail it seemed on the edge of danger. They hurried back to the house, Emily racing ahead to call for her mother. Megan's face shifted from relief to astonishment as Jack opened his coat on the kitchen floor. "Is that a bobcat kitten?" "Yes," Jack confirmed, his voice low. "And before you say anything, just look at them." The two kittens curled tightly together again on the kitchen rug. Smokey patiently groomed the little bobcat's head with gentle licks. Only now did they realize it was a female. And despite her wild nature, she seemed to place complete trust in Smokey's warmth. "She's fading," Emily whispered. "Look at her. She's skin and bones." Megan, who had worked as a veterinary technician before her daughter was born, knelt to examine the bobcat carefully. "She's severely dehydrated, critically malnourished, maybe 4 weeks old. Her mother is probably dead. Female bobcats almost never abandon their young, unless something happens to them." "Can we save her?" Emily asked, her eyes pleading. Megan looked at her daughter's face, overflowing with hope, then back down at the two tiny creatures clinging to each other on the cold kitchen floor. "We'll try," she nodded softly. "But we have to call Dr. Harper at the Wildlife Rescue Center. Everything needs to be done legally." Dr. Elena Harper arrived within an hour, despite the treacherous, icy mountain roads. She was a small woman with graying hair, pulled back in a practical ponytail. For 20 years, she had run the Northwoods Wildlife Rehabilitation Center. "Well," she exhaled after examining both cats, "this is the first time I've ever seen a case like this." She confirmed the bobcat was female, about 4 weeks old, suffering from exposure and severe starvation. "She wouldn't survive another night," Dr. Harper said. "The question is, how did these two creatures find each other?" "Maybe Smokey heard her crying," Emily suggested. "Maybe?" Dr. Harper nodded thoughtfully. "Or perhaps the bobcat followed Smokey's scent, seeking warmth. Young bobcats are often surprisingly social in their early weeks. In the wild, littermates will huddle together for comfort. She may have simply thought Smokey was a silvery gray sibling." After a few phone calls, Dr. Harper returned with good news. Given the extraordinary circumstances, and because separating them now might cause additional trauma, she had secured temporary permission for the Carter family to foster the bobcat under her direct supervision. "She'll need to be bottle-fed every few hours with a special formula," Dr. Harper explained. "And later, when she's older, she'll have to be transferred to a facility equipped for full wildlife rehabilitation. For now, if the family is willing, we're willing," Megan replied at once, even surprising herself with the conviction in her own voice. They named the little bobcat Willow, for her wide, glistening eyes that held a fragile, innocent look, like young willow branches swaying in the wind. In the weeks that followed, the Carters' farmhouse transformed into a temporary wildlife nursery. Megan took time off work to handle the round-the-clock bottle feedings. Jack built a large, heated enclosure in the garage, so that when Willow grew stronger, she would have a safe space of her own. Emily, meanwhile, picked up her mother's old camera, capturing every moment. Each photo became a page in a visual diary of a friendship that should never have been possible. Smokey quickly assumed the role of guardian and teacher to Willow. He showed her how to use the litter box, though in truth, Willow figured that out almost instantly. He taught her the joy of chasing feathered toys across the living room floor, demonstrated the proper technique for batting at dangling objects, and showed her the warmest sunlit spots in the house for afternoon naps. In return, Willow awakened something wild that had long lain dormant in Smokey. His play grew bolder, more powerful. He learned to pounce with a precision so sharp it seemed his distant wild ancestors would have nodded in pride. The two would tumble and wrestle with such innocent joy that the whole family couldn't help but laugh. At night, they curled up together in the oversized dog bed Megan had bought, Smokey's fluffy tail always draped protectively over Willow like a blanket. They groomed each other after every meal, sat side by side to eat, though, from separate bowls. Willow gradually weaned off the bottle, moving to a special carnivore diet, and together with Smokey, she developed an elaborate system of chirps, purrs, and mews, a private language that seemed perfectly clear to them both. "They're truly bonded," Dr. Harper observed during one of her weekly visits. "I've seen similar bonds among orphaned animals raised together, but never between a house cat and a wild creature like this." Perhaps the story would have remained a private family miracle if Megan hadn't posted a short video on social media. It was just a simple clip. Willow resting her spotted head on Smokey's fluffy belly on the couch, both of them purring so loudly, the phone's microphone crackled. The caption was plain: "Our house cat saved a bobcat kitten during a snowstorm. Now they're inseparable." Within days, the clip exploded with millions of views. News crews began showing up at their door. The Carter family suddenly found themselves reluctant celebrities, their story featured on morning shows and wildlife programs alike. Donations poured into the Northwoods Rescue Center. Children from all over sent drawings of Smokey and Willow. An elderly woman in Florida wrote a letter, saying the story had given her hope after losing the husband she had shared her life with. And yet, the fame was bittersweet, for deep down, everyone knew the day of parting would eventually come. At 6 months old, Willow had grown into a sleek young bobcat, her spots more pronounced, her broad paws powerful, her wild instincts showing more clearly with each passing day. She still played affectionately with Smokey, but every movement now carried a strength that could make even a house cat as large as a Maine Coon wary. "It's time," Dr. Harper said softly on a bright April morning. "The soft-release sanctuary is ready for her." The sanctuary lay only 30 miles away, spanning thousands of acres, a place where rehabilitated bobcats learned to hunt again, to sharpen their instincts before being fully released into the wild. There, Willow would still receive support during the transition, but she would have her freedom. The goodbye was heart-wrenching. Smokey seemed to sense what was coming. That morning, he lay pressed against Willow, patiently grooming every strand of her fur, lavishing special care on her proud tufted ears for nearly an hour. When they placed Willow into the carrier, Smokey sat pressed right beside it, one paw resting against the bars as if to hold her back. For many days after Willow left, Smokey sat silently by the window, his eyes fixed on the distant edge of the forest. He barely ate. Even his favorite toys lay untouched. More than once, Emily found him in the garage, curled inside the empty enclosure, purring softly to himself, as if calling his friend home. "His heart is broken," the girl sobbed to her mother. "Sometimes love means knowing when to let go," Megan whispered, holding her daughter close, though she too felt the piercing truth in her child's words. 3 slow weeks passed. Smokey gradually returned to his routines, eating more, though he still spent long hours at the window, his gaze never leaving the dark line of the forest. Then, on a crisp May morning, Emily's shout rang out from the kitchen. "Mom, Dad, come quick." At the edge of the woods, where the yard met the trees, a young bobcat sat silently. She was larger now than the day she'd left, her coat sleek and shining with health, but unmistakably, it was Willow. Smokey was already waiting at the door, mewing urgently. Jack carefully cracked it open, allowing the gray cat to step softly onto the porch. Willow didn't come closer to the house. Her wild instincts were too strong now, yet she remained perfectly still as Smokey slowly walked toward her. They touched noses through the porch screen, both rumbling with deep, warm purrs. Willow stayed for perhaps 10 minutes, sitting quietly while Smokey rubbed against the screen, marking her with the familiar scent of their old friendship. Then, as silently as she had come, she melted back into the deep forest. "She came back," Emily whispered. "She came back for Smokey," and it became a pattern. Every few weeks, sometimes at dawn, sometimes at dusk, Willow would appear again at the edge of the woods. She never came any closer to the house than she had that first day, but she always waited patiently for Smokey. And somehow, Smokey always knew. He would abandon whatever he was doing, racing out to the porch to meet his friend. They would touch noses, purr softly, sometimes playing a gentle game of paw taps through the porch screen. Once, Jack saw Willow leave a dead mouse at the very spot where they always met, an instinctive yet sincere gift for the gray friend who had once saved her life. When told about these visits, Dr. Harper could only shake her head, her eyes shining with amazement. Bobcats are solitary, fiercely territorial animals. For her to maintain this bond, to actively seek out a house cat, this is unprecedented, Dr. Harper exclaimed. The visits continued through summer and into fall. When winter returned, a full year after that fateful snowstorm, the Carter family began to wonder, had Willow vanished into the deep woods to establish a territory of her own? But on the first snowy morning of December, there she was again, sitting in her usual place, snow gathering on her tufted ears. Smokey bounded out at once, and as always, they touched noses through the porch screen, purring in those quiet tones only they understood. Forest bonded, Jack murmured, sipping his coffee, his eyes fixed on the window. "That's right," Megan whispered. "That's what they are." From that moment, the phrase stuck. The Carter family began calling them the forest-bonded pair, a house cat and a wild bobcat, bound together by a fateful snowstorm, by the warmth they shared in desperation, and by a friendship that transcended the line between tame and wild. Emily, then 11 years old and wiser for the experience, kept a private journal about Smokey and Willow. Her final entry that winter read, "Mom says some friendships can't be explained, only witnessed." She continued, "Smokey and Willow found each other when they both needed saving. Willow from the cold, and Smokey from being just another ordinary house cat. I think maybe they're still saving each other every time they meet. Smokey reminds Willow that she was once loved, and Willow reminds Smokey that he's brave. Maybe that's what friendship really is, seeing the wild and the gentle living side by side, and loving both parts as one." The story of Smokey and Willow quickly spread far beyond their small Vermont town. Wildlife biologists came, astonished at an interaction never before recorded in scientific literature. Animal behaviorists even published studies on interspecies bonding. But for the Carter family, the miracle was never in the science. It was in a single, simple image, a gray cat touching noses with a wild bobcat. Two friends who by all logic should never have existed, bound together by a snowstorm and held together by something deeper than instinct. Years later, when Emily entered veterinary school, she still told the story to anyone willing to listen, that her gray cat had once vanished in a snowstorm, only to return as a hero. That sometimes, the deepest bonds are the very ones that should never have existed at all. That love does not always mean keeping something close. Sometimes, love means learning to love across distance through passing seasons and constant change, amidst the wild and the free. And back in rural Vermont, on quiet mornings when silver mist still rose from the edge of the woods, An aging gray cat would sit by the window, his eyes fixed on the distance, waiting for a glimpse of the spotted coat and tufted ears he knew so well. Not every visit brought Willow. She had her own territory to patrol, perhaps even cubs of her own by now. But whenever she returned, Smokey would hurry out onto the porch to greet her. The two old friends recognized each other for only a fleeting moment before returning to their separate worlds. The forest knew their secret. The wind carried their story. And in a world so often divided between wild and tame, between danger and safety, between human and nature, Smokey and Willow stood as proof that love knows no such boundaries. They were living evidence that sometimes, in the midst of a storm, souls that should never have met can indeed find one another. That a single moment of recognition, a choice to stay and share warmth with another living being, can be enough to forge a bond that lasts a lifetime. That is the story the Carter family tells whenever someone asks about the photographs on their mantle. A gray cat and a spotted bobcat touching noses through a screen door. Two hearts forever forest bonded, forever friends.